She said I was her forever. She cried when she promised me loyalty, the kind that's supposed to last through storms. But loyalty doesn't vanish overnight. It rots in silence. I didn't lose her to another man. I lost her to the lies she built between us. And that's where my betrayal began. If you've ever trusted someone who betrayed you, hit like, because this story isn't just mine. It might be yours too. I used to believe loyalty was simple. You love someone, you stay true. That was it. No hidden rules, no gray areas. When I met Arwen, she made me think I'd finally found someone who believed in that same kind of simplicity. The kind of loyalty that doesn't need to be spoken every day, because it's written in how you look at each other. She had this calm, steady energy about her, like she could silence every bit of noise in my head just by existing near me. It started in the most ordinary way. A mutual friend introduced us at a small dinner. Nothing dramatic. She laughed at my sarcasm. I teased her for being too polite. It was easy, natural, like we'd already met in another lifetime. I remember thinking how rare it was to meet someone who didn't have to try so hard to be real. Within weeks, we were inseparable. We'd spend hours talking about everything. Childhood dreams, broken friendships, what scared us most about getting older. I told her I feared wasting time on the wrong person. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Then don't. I'm not going anywhere." Those words stuck with me. Maybe because they sounded like something you'd say in a movie right before everything falls apart. But at that time, they felt like a promise I could trust. I wanted to believe her, and I did. Every bit of me did. I remember the first night we stayed up until sunrise. We were sitting on my apartment balcony, drinking cheap coffee, wrapped in a blanket that was too small for two people. She looked at the sky and whispered, "You feel like home." I didn't realize back then how fragile that word was, home. When we moved in together, it felt like crossing into a new world. Our mornings became quiet rituals, her humming while making breakfast, me pretending to read the news but really watching her move around the kitchen. There were moments when I'd catch her smiling at her phone, and she'd say it was just a meme or a friend from work. I didn't think much of it. I wasn't the jealous type. Trust came naturally to me. Maybe that was my mistake, thinking that love meant never doubting. We built what I thought was stability. She met my family, called my mother Mom without hesitation. Every birthday, every anniversary, she'd write me these handwritten notes, always ending with, "You and me against the world." I kept every single one of them in a drawer beside my bed. There were days when I'd read them just to remind myself how lucky I was. But life has this quiet way of testing the things you think are unbreakable. It doesn't shout when something's wrong. It whispers. And I started hearing those whispers in the smallest things. Her voice on the phone sounded different, softer, distant. Our conversations became shorter, like we were talking in half sentences. I brushed it off, told myself it was just work stress, or maybe she needed space. But deep down, something in me started to ache in ways I couldn't explain. Still, I kept trying. I took her out more, surprised her with little notes the way she used to do for me. She'd smile, thank me, but the warmth behind her eyes had cooled. I remember one evening, she hugged me, and it felt like she was saying goodbye even though we hadn't fought. That's when I realized loyalty isn't always lost in loud moments. Sometimes it slips away quietly right in front of you. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of my undoing. The moment where everything beautiful started to unravel, thread by thread. And maybe that's the cruelest part, that love doesn't die with betrayal. It lingers, gasping for air, long after the truth has already poisoned it. Because when she promised me loyalty, I believed her. But promises mean nothing when the heart already belongs somewhere else. It's strange how betrayal doesn't arrive with a bang. It seeps in quietly, like water through a crack in the wall. At first, you don't notice. You tell yourself everything's fine, that you're just imagining things. That's how it started with Arwen. Little things barely noticeable at first. The kind of things you ignore because you love the person too much to believe they could hurt you. She began working late more often. Meetings that never seemed to end. Projects that suddenly required weekend hours. At first, I admired her dedication. She'd walk through the door exhausted, drop her bag, and collapse next to me, whispering, "Long day." And I'd smile, stroke her hair, and tell her to rest. But somewhere deep down, something didn't sit right. It wasn't about the hours. It was about the distance that came with them. Her voice, when she spoke to me, started sounding ... polite. Not cold, just careful. Like she was measuring her words, making sure they didn't give something away. Her phone, once left anywhere around the house, suddenly became her shadow. Always face down, always locked. If it buzzed, she'd reach for it before I could even glance at the screen. I tried to shake off the doubt. I really did. Because the moment you start doubting someone you love, everything inside you begins to crumble. You question your worth, your instincts, your sanity. So I told myself stories. That maybe her boss was pressuring her. That she was just tired. That love sometimes goes through quiet seasons. But the heart knows. The heart always knows. One night, I woke up to the sound of her laughter. It was soft, muffled, the kind of laugh she used to give me when we'd whisper secrets under the covers. Only this time, it wasn't meant for me. I turned slightly and saw the glow of her phone lighting her face. She looked happy. Too happy. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, but inside I felt something sharp tear through me, something colder than anger. It was disbelief. The next morning, she kissed my cheek before leaving for work. Her touch felt mechanical, rehearsed. I stood there for a long time after the door closed, staring at the space she'd just occupied, wondering if she was still the same person I fell in love with, or a stranger wearing her smile. That evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I told myself I'd just look once, just to ease the storm inside me. When she went to shower, she left her phone charging on the counter. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I didn't even know what I was looking for until I found it. A message at the top of the screen. His name, Damon. And under it, words that hollowed me out completely. Last night felt real. Can't wait to see you again. My body went numb. Every sound in the world disappeared. All I could hear was my heartbeat pounding in my ears. She stepped out of the shower a few minutes later, towel around her hair, humming softly. I couldn't even look at her. I put the phone back exactly where it was and forced a smile that didn't belong to me anymore. That night, I barely spoke. She noticed. She asked if I was okay, and I lied. I said I was just tired. She smiled, relieved, and laid her head on my shoulder. And as she drifted off to sleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how you can share a bed with someone and still feel completely alone. In that silence, something inside me broke. Not loud, not violent, just a quiet fracture, and I realized the truth. Love doesn't need enemies to die. It just needs lies dressed as loyalty. That was the night I stopped trusting her words. And for the first time, I started watching not because I wanted to catch her, but because I needed to understand how the person who once promised me forever could already be halfway out the door. The truth doesn't knock before it enters. It just bursts in, tearing down whatever peace you've built to protect yourself. I knew something was wrong. But knowing and seeing are two very different things. For days, I lived in a quiet war between my head and my heart. My head told me it was over. My heart kept begging for a reason to believe otherwise. Arwen had started staying out even later. Work dinners, she said, always with that same tired smile. I stopped asking questions because I already hated the answers I imagined. But one night, something inside me refused to stay silent. She left for one of her so-called late meetings, and I decided to follow. Not out of rage, but out of desperation. Desperation for truth, even if it shattered me. I parked a few streets away from the restaurant she'd mentioned. I waited, hands tight on the steering wheel, chest pounding like a drum I couldn't quiet. 10 minutes later, I saw her. She wasn't alone. She was laughing, that kind of unguarded laugh you only share with someone who feels safe to you. The man beside her reached across the table, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and she didn't stop him. She leaned into it. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white. My throat burned, but no tears came, just silence. It wasn't even the touch that broke me. It was the expression on her face. I used to think she only looked at me like that. That small, adoring smile that said, "You're the one." Now I saw her give it to someone else like it meant nothing. I left before they did. Drove home with a kind of numbness that feels heavier than pain. The city lights blurred into streaks as I tried to hold myself together. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just felt this strange, hollow calm, the kind that comes after the final blow. When she came home later, she smelled faintly of his cologne, and that was the moment I knew it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was betrayal, real, raw, irreversible. The next day, she acted normal. She made breakfast, asked me about my plans, kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. That fake normalcy was almost crueler than the act itself. I wanted to confront her right there, but I didn't. Not yet. I wanted to hear the lies from her own mouth first. So I waited. That night, while she was asleep, I picked up her phone again. My hand shook, but I unlocked it with her birthday, a code I now hated knowing. The messages were there, thousands of them. Words that once belonged to me now belonged to someone else. The good mornings, the I miss yous, the you make me feel alive. I felt sick reading them. My eyes blurred, but I forced myself to scroll until I found the one that ended everything for me. It said, "He suspects something. Be careful." That was it. Not guilt, not fear. Just calculation. She wasn't sorry. She was careful. Careful about not being caught. I remember setting the phone down on the nightstand, staring at her as she slept beside me, her hand resting softly near mine. That hand had touched another man. Those lips had whispered lies into both our ears. I sat there for what felt like hours, feeling every ounce of love drain out of me. When morning came, I confronted her. No shouting at first, just quiet truth. I told her what I'd seen, what I'd read. She froze. For a second, I saw panic flash in her eyes. Then the mask came back on. "You're overthinking," she said. "He's just a friend." Her voice cracked on the word friend, and that's when I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was tragic. Finally, she admitted it. She cried, said it was a mistake, that she didn't mean for it to happen. I remember whispering, loyalty doesn't accidentally disappear. She slapped me hard. Maybe out of shame, maybe because she couldn't stand the truth reflected back at her. I didn't hit back. I didn't even move. I just looked at her, the woman who once swore she'd never hurt me, and felt nothing but emptiness. That was the night everything ended. The love, the trust, the promise. I didn't cry when she begged for forgiveness. I just walked out. Because sometimes the loudest revenge you can give is silence. The kind that tells them you've already buried what you once believed in. When I left that night, I didn't pack much. Just a few clothes, my wallet, and the hollow version of myself that she left behind. The streets were silent, and the air felt heavier than usual. It was strange. After months of confusion and pain, I finally had the truth, and yet it didn't feel like closure. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with nothing left to lose. I drove aimlessly for hours, no destination in mind. I wasn't running away. I just didn't want to be anywhere that reminded me of her. Every turn of the wheel felt like I was peeling away another layer of the man I used to be. I pulled over by the old lake we used to visit on weekends. It was peaceful, the water still and dark, reflecting a sky that didn't care about my heartbreak. I sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of what loyalty even meant anymore. She promised me forever, and she broke it for something temporary. That realization hit harder than the betrayal itself. I thought of every time I defended her when friends said she seemed distant. Every lie I ignored because I loved her too deeply to doubt her. Love makes fools out of honest people, and I had been the biggest fool of all. The next morning, she called me non-stop. Dozens of missed calls, then messages, apologies, explanations, please. She said it was over with him, that it didn't mean anything, that it was a mistake she'd take to her grave if I just came home. But that's the thing. Once you break something that sacred, even if you glue it back together, it never looks the same. I didn't reply. I let her words hang there in the void unanswered. Days turned into weeks. I stayed with a friend for a while, but the silence was suffocating. Every time my phone buzzed, a part of me hoped it was her, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted her to suffer the way I did. That's when something inside me shifted. The pain stopped feeling like weakness and started to feel like power. For the first time, I didn't want to cry. I wanted to make things right in my own way. So I began to plan, not revenge out of cruelty, but justice. She had shattered my peace, and I wanted her to feel what it's like when everything you hide comes to light. I still had her messages, her photos, her confessions, proof of everything. I could have destroyed her instantly, posted it all online, exposed her publicly. But I didn't want noise. I wanted precision. The man she cheated with, Damon, he wasn't single. He had a wife. I didn't know her, but I knew what it felt like to live inside a lie. I found her social media easily, saw her smiling in family photos, unaware of the truth hiding behind them. I hesitated at first. Sending her the screenshots felt cruel, but not sending them felt worse. Because silence protects the wrong people. So one night, I did it. I compiled everything, the messages, the dates, the photos, and I sent them to her with one simple line, "You deserve to know." I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. I wasn't looking for recognition. I just wanted balance. Karma doesn't always come on its own. Sometimes it needs a little help finding its way. The next morning, chaos erupted. I didn't see it, but I heard it. Arwen called me dozens of times, crying, begging me to talk. Her voice was shattered. She said her life was falling apart, that Damon's wife had confronted her, that everyone at work knew. I just listened to the voicemail in silence. There was no joy in it, only a quiet sense of completion. I didn't destroy her life. I just stopped protecting the lie that was already destroying mine. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully that night. No nightmares. No replaying her laughter in my head. Just silence, calm, clean silence. The kind that feels like rebirth. Because sometimes, karma doesn't knock loudly. It whispers through your peace, reminding you that the truth always finds its way home. When karma finally arrives, it doesn't come with thunder. It comes quietly in the moments when the world stops spinning just long enough for you to realize you've survived. That's what it felt like in the weeks that followed. I didn't reach out to Arwen again, and she didn't stop trying. At first, her messages were filled with apologies, long paragraphs of guilt and regret. Then they turned into anger, blaming me for ruining everything. And eventually, they just stopped. Silence. That was the moment I knew it was over. Not just between us, but inside me too. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure or an apology that could rewrite the past. I had already found what I needed. Peace. The first few mornings were strange. I'd wake up expecting to see her beside me, expecting the same old routine, her soft humming in the kitchen, her perfume lingering in the air. But there was only stillness now, and somehow it didn't hurt. I learned to sit with the quiet. I made my own coffee, opened the curtains, and watched the sunlight pour into the room like it hadn't in months. It's funny how light feels different when you're no longer carrying someone else's shadow. A few months later, I heard she had lost her job. The fallout from her affair had followed her, and the man she threw everything away for had gone back to his wife. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't gloat. I just nodded quietly, because deep down, I knew it was never my job to punish her. Life takes care of that part on its own. That's the strange beauty of karma. It always returns, just in the way you least expect. As for me, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I threw away the things that reminded me of her, the letters, the photographs, the mugs she loved. I moved into a new apartment, smaller but filled with peace. I started working out again, spent time with old friends I'd lost touch with. For the first time in a long while, I didn't need validation from anyone. I just needed to be me again, the man I was before her lies chipped away at my trust. One evening, I was sitting by that same lake where I'd once fallen apart. The air was still, and the sun was melting into the horizon. I thought about how much had changed, how much I had changed. I realized that sometimes, betrayal doesn't destroy you. It rebuilds you. It strips away everything false, leaving behind only what's real. I whispered to the water, "Thank you for breaking me." Because without that pain, I would have never learned the difference between love and attachment, between loyalty and illusion. I forgave her eventually, not because she asked for it, but because I deserved it. Holding on to anger would have meant she still controlled me, even in her absence. So I let it go. All of it. The memories, the questions, the ache. I stopped wondering why she did it, because the truth is, betrayal says more about them than it ever does about you. A few months after, I ran into her by accident. Grocery store, middle of the day. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in spirit. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw recognition mixed with guilt. She tried to speak, but I simply smiled, nodded, and walked away. No harsh words. No revenge. Just calm. That silence between us was louder than any argument we could have had. It was the sound of endings and freedom. As I left the store, I realized something profound. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened. It's about reclaiming your peace from what broke you. I walked to my car, took a deep breath, and for the first time, it didn't hurt to remember her name. It didn't sting to recall her promise. It just felt like another story I had outgrown. Because in the end, she promised me loyalty, but her infidelity became my awakening. She taught me that love without loyalty is just poetry without meaning. And betrayal? It doesn't define you. It frees you. So if you're listening, and someone once shattered your faith the way she shattered mine, don't chase revenge. Just rebuild. Let time and truth handle the rest. Because the sweetest revenge isn't destruction, it's peace.